Yeah, greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mangoes of South Florida. And today's date, Friday, January 27th, 2017. Yes, first month of January is coming really quick. It'll be a little bit of a short segment, a short episode, but that's okay. It's got to focus in a few areas. But, you know, things are doing well. I can't really complain. If I do, it'll be a waste of energy, right? Absolutely. Yeah, it looks like Florida's going to suspend their dispensary program until they get legislation through. Like, come on, give me a break. Stop bending over for the pharmaceutical companies, will ya? They don't care about you, my fellow servants within the Sunshine State. And of course, you got people complaining, mayors and so forth are bickering about representing sanctuary cities, and Donald Trump has an executive order on freezing their funds. And now some of them belly up. Oh, we'll bring that up there. So, of course, war in the press once again, and the state supersedes D.C. in an interesting case on water rights. So, let's just start off here from newsbuzz.com. This is by Dr. James Petras. This one's entitled Obama's Political Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, Manning as Bait. And it's interesting here when it says Obama has sanctified himself at Manning's expense and assured Chelsea's destruction. And the quote, it says here, I wanted the public to know that everyone in Iraq and Afghanistan were targets that needed to be neutralized, but rather people who were struggling to live in the pressure cooker environment of what we called atmospheric warfare. So that says here, common along political leaders who commit heartless crimes while carving popular laudation as heroes and misunderstood saints, is political Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is PMSP. PMSP best explains the psychological drive of politicians and policymakers who inflict relentless, systematic mass destruction and then intervene in a most theatrical manner to save a few victims, thus drawing gratitude from the victim and public support for their humanitarian intervention, ignorant of their fundamental role in creating the mayhem in the first place. The actions of the outgoing President Barack Obama in the last 3 days of his administration presents an example of PMSP on the domestic front. Throughout his 8 years as President of the United States, Obama exhibited many symptoms of PMSP, both abroad and in the U.S. For his cynical crimes, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, among other honors. PMSP, the abuser as savior. Each of Obama's relentless military interventions, including Libya, Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, and especially Syria, were characterized by the deliberate and total destruction of the means of normal civilized social existence for defenseless civilians. The bombing of homes, factories, markets, weddings, funerals, schools, hospitals, leading to the deaths of many thousands and the uprooting of millions into desperate flight. In each case, Obama would proclaim that he was saving the victims from imminent genocide by an abusive rule or ethnic group. Humanitarian mission, right? Yeah. And all those bend over Bob and Obama supporters, well, that's okay. I won't protest against him. I will continue on. He would rush into him to provide a few baskets of relief and a few blankets to some bedraggled survivors of his bombing campaigns and bask in the glowing praise of mass media propagandists and fellow imperialists. Choreographed applause and adulation would seem to follow America's first black president everywhere. Actually, he's a mulatto. Obama's bombs, arms, and mercenary drove hundreds of thousands of families into the streets, into the mountains, and most horrifically, into rickety, overloaded boats on the seas. In each series of destruction and chaos, he would calculate the point at which his humanitarian intervention would most effectively reflect on his heroism. See? Kind of, sort of, exactly. Right from his teleprompter, to be exact. He destroyed the entire nation of Libya, shredded its institution and infrastructure, bombed at cities and villages, even deliberately sending a deadly missile into the home, sheltering a half dozen of President Muammar Gaddafi's small grandchildren, and finally ended up with the public death by torture of the wounded Libyan president, sodomized by stakes, documented an imperialist pornographic snuff film that should have revolted the entire world. That the main victims of Obama's liberation of Libya were hundreds of thousands of black Libyan citizens and sub-Saharan African workers did little to detract from his public persona as the first African American world hero. The capsized boatloads of fleeing black Libyans and the bloated bodies washing ashore on the beaches of Spain and Italy were never linked to the criminal policies of our Nobel Peace recipient. He even urged Europe to accept the miserable refugees fleeing his war in a gesture of supreme PMSP. He could do no wrong. This serial political killer had an unquenchable thirst for sympathy and admiration, and a wholly corrupt propaganda machine to polish his halo. Obama's PMSP and Chelsea Manning. In his last few days in power, Obama turned his heroic and humanitarian attention to individual American victim of grotesque injustice in our bloated and racist prison system, just to prove that the great man could set up and then save individuals as well as nations. The code calculus of the Manchausen syndrome by proxy president finally focused on the fragile form of the imprisoned and tortured Chelsea Manning, hero to millions and condemned traitor to the empire ruling elite. For 8 years, Barack Obama pursued the arrest, torture, kangaroo court martial, virtual life sentencing, and prison mistreatment of the U.S. soldier who had dared to expose large scale war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan and release thousands of damning documents of systematic political war crime hidden from her compatriots. She released videos of U.S. pilots playing execution games against a crowd of defenseless Iraqi civilians, including children, as well as equally egregious war crimes elsewhere. Obama and his fellow war criminals were furious at Manning's revelations and approved her of 35 years, some of which has been served before her conviction in solitary confinement, often stripped naked in a condition described by the United Nations as torture and inhumane treatment. After her conviction, she was harassed and driven to multiple attempts to take her life. After 7 years of brutal and degrading treatment spanning almost the entire Obama administration, the condition of the frail transgender soldier hero, almost immortal to truth and justice, her supporters and the world community were desperate with concern for her safety, survival, and insanity. At this point, and at least 3 days of his administration on January 17, 2017, Obama commuted Manning's sentence but left it to the oncoming Trump administration to free her 5 months later in May. Instead of celebrating the liberation and vindication of the hero Chelsea Manning in May, the media drowned out the plight of the frail, tortured whistleblower when its loud tributes to the mercy and heroism of the serial abuser Barack Obama. Conclusion: in his last days, Obama played the merciful Pasha, commuting Manning's virtual life sentence, which he still justified. Obama did so in a way that literally begged the incoming rapidly reactionary regime of Donald Trump to rescind the commutation or at least impose such levels of torture and pressure on Manning that her very survival and sanity in prison up to her scheduled release in May will be in grave jeopardy. The most virulent militarist in the U.S. Congress, including war criminal John McCain, which we all know he's a CFR scumbag and a bend over Bob to the New World Order, are howling for Manning's head, while they will torture Manning during the next 5 months behind thick prison walls. The press will compare the vindictive Trump with the benevolent Obama. Double standards, I would say, right? Absolutely, because those media guys, whores, are not more than psychological parasites. That's just my view. This is a cynical setup for our hero, Chelsea Manning, to be driven to suicide by Trump, while her ultimate prosecutor, the saintly Barack Obama, will shine for having issued the belated commutation. Obama could easily have released Manning earlier and spared her this moral danger, but he chose to tie the poor prisoner to a stake under the bloodlusty noses of our most sadistical militarists and invite their public display of savagery. In one very self-glorifying pronouncement 3 days before leaving office, Obama has sanctified himself at Manning's expense and ensured Chelsea's destruction. This is virtuosic political Manchausen syndrome by proxy by a true master. I did a little short segment on that on my Instagram, making this statement. And I said before, President Barack Obama never gave a damn about Chelsea Manning, but to make himself look pristine and believe all you gullible individuals will assume he is still an honorable man. I did not like him before president. I despise him afterwards. I treat him like Jeb Bush, George W. Bush, and Dick Cheney, and Al Gore, etc. Another bend over Bob to the New World Order is now a private citizen. People, if you're still going to believe we should all kiss the floor he walks on, you are having the Jim Jones syndrome. Plain and simple. He is not a hero. He's another treasonous parasite. That's Barack Hussein Obama. And it doesn't matter if he's dark skinned. Okay? So don't even think about calling me a racist, because if he's a bend over Bob, when bend over Bob's or trees crash become a race, then we'll talk. Chelsea Manning should be released immediately. And I remember too reading a little rant by President Trump saying he's a traitor and all that. She's a traitor. You know what? I threw a video at him about Chelsea Manning and the war crime empire. That was done by Kurt Nemo for a geopolitical report. I may just add that to the memo as well, so you folks can really look at yourself. And Kurt Nemo and Newsbuds are very memorable source of great information, and it's not partisan bias. So, everyone, put your thoughts and prayers for Chelsea Manning to be released immediately before they may take advantage of her and may commit suicide before her release or be psychologically damaged, scarred. This is just another example of the war on whistleblowers. It is only convenient for this pathetic, tyrannical Uncle Tom, Obama. Another unmemorable politician that you should use him as a fire hydrant when you have your dog, you urinate on him. That's my attributes towards this man. Completely unacceptable. And all those folks say he's a great guy. If you go to, and I'll say this, if you say these clowns that worship Obama, and if you go out and protest if a war happens under Trump's watch, you are nothing more than filthy hypocrites. You could take your Mickey Mouse Club syndrome somewhere else because you contaminate in space. That's enough I'm going to say about that. I know I have digressed on this topic. You hear some music in the background. I'm at CJ's Java Lounge, right along the beautiful new river of Fort Lauderdale. DJ's playing tonight, so he's been pretty considerate. So if you hear music in the background, don't worry about it. He knows I'm doing the show, hopefully. Well, it's a good vibe. I'll give that to them. All right, next one came from USA Today. It was updated 3 hours ago. Oh yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it came out the 26th. First sanctuary city caves to Trump demands. In 1 week, President Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do, of sort. Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Jimenez speaks during a hurricane preparedness press conference at the Miami-Dade. Oh, that's a photo. Sorry about that. President Trump is hailing the first victory in his fight against sanctuary cities after South Florida mayor ordered his employees on Thursday to begin working more closely with federal immigration authorities. For years, Miami-Dade County has refused to hold some undocumented immigrants in its jails for federal immigration agents. But after Trump signed an executive order threatening to withhold federal funding from sanctuary cities, Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez changed his mind. Oh my God! I'm not gonna get the money. Jimenez signed an executive order Thursday ordering the director of its corrections department to begin honoring all requests by Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) to hold immigration suspects in the Miami-Dade County jails. Miami-Dade County complies with federal law and intends to fully cooperate with the federal government to order Reed. Jimenez said he made a decision to ensure that the county does not lose out on $355 million in federal funding in his coming in 2017. Wow, another county that's owned by the feds. That is funny. I'm sorry. That's pathetic to people in that county, the so-called servants in that county. They're just a fine example, okay? Trump was quick to praise the decision. Tweet on Thursday, right decision, strong. The term sanctuary city is a broad term that describes up to 300 communities that have policies protecting the nation's 11 million undocumented immigrants from deportation. Some refuse to share any information with ICE agents. Some will share information but refuse to hold undocumented immigrants for the sole purpose of giving ICE agents time to pick them up. Trump vowed throughout the campaign to crack down on those cities. He often cited the example of Kate Steinle, a San Francisco woman who was shot and killed by an undocumented immigrant who has been released by the city's sheriff's department. On Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order that directed the Department of Homeland Security to identify and label sanctuary cities in the U.S. It ordered the department to publish a weekly roundup of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants, including any police departments that had custody of those immigrants but chose to release them. The order also directed the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security to identify federal grants that can be withheld from sanctuary cities that continue their practice. Those federal departments gives out millions of dollars in grants each year to help local communities hire police officers, hold undocumented immigrants, improve community policing practices, and crack down on violence against women. Can we say centralization will give you money? These jurisdictions have caused immeasurable harm to the American people and to the fabric of our republic. Trump's order read. Big Big city mayors responded forcefully to Trump's orders, with mayors from San Francisco to Chicago to New York vowing to fight back. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh said he would even allow undocumented immigrants to seek refuge in City Hall. They can use my office, Walsh said. They can use any office in this building. After President Trump signed an executive order exploring cutting off funding to so-called sanctuary cities, mayors of both coasts of the U.S. said cities will not be bullied. A collection of chiefs and sheriffs on Thursday also criticized Trump's attacks on sanctuary cities. They say the practice of holding suspects in the jail solely for ICE has been ruled unconstitutional by federal courts, and they say the federal government should not try to force cities to carry out the federal responsibility of immigration enforcement. Law enforcement has a responsibility to work with federal immigration policies, and the vast majority of police departments do, said Montgomery County, Maryland Police Chief Tom Manger. But this notion that the federal government will cut funding to coerce local policies to change is troubling. I will have to say this. I know I did an article a while back by Judge Napolitano talked about he can do this legally. And there's a 10th Amendment issue as well, of course. And of course, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution about repelling invasion, the federal government's obligation to repel invasion, trespassing. When it comes to illegal immigrants, I'm saying the illegal ones. And I'm not condemning, they are legitimately trespassing. And this is just an example. This is happening worldwide, my friends. But everyone be calling Trump a racist? I have to disagree. Because technically he's legit, honest, regardless of what you think. And I'm not even a Trump supporter. All right? I'm just giving you folks the facts. Because even in the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, hold on, I'm looking this up right now. Make that statement. Hopefully I'm correct if it's Article 4, Section 4. I want to make sure I'm accurate on this, okay, my friends? Just bear with me. Yeah, right here from Annenberg Classroom. Very good. And yeah, it says it right here. The United States shall guarantee every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and the application of legislators of the or the executive and when legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. So there you go. Article 4, Section 4, Paragraph 1. So I'm going to add that to the memo. Yeah, it's called education, my friends. And it doesn't matter where they come from, even if they have the same last name as mine. This is being ethical. And a lot of some of these folks may be coming in here illegally. Sometimes they may have their visa expire, or they may have are seeking asylum. Things do happen. People got to take the initiative on hiring an immigration lawyer. They have the right to be heard. But if you're going to be using criminal intent, ship your behinds out. Plain and simple. Your diplomatic immunity is null and void to all those folks that are under this status. And I agree, many others do pay taxes. Yeah, I'm not going to say that. But the whole thing is do things legit. Because there's folks out there from parts of the world that come here. Even Honduras. I know a friend of mine from Honduras went through the right channels. They became citizens. They're very proud of that position. They don't like seeing this either. So you can't say it's a race issue. That is whitewashed, stagnant, null and void. And all those people are complaining, like de Blasio and those other idiotic mayors. I know many of you are involved, the city's involved with the Strong Cities Network. If you got problems getting funds, do yourself a favor. Contact the Trilateral Commission, the Rothschilds, or the Council of Foreign Relations to get money. Because the Strong Cities Network is funded by these clowns. You could go to my episode, Strong Cities Network and NWO Lambert, and I explained it all on there. So you can just look it up yourselves, my friends, and you can make your own judgment. And the site has merit. Okay. So next one. This is from Digital Journal. It came out a couple of hours ago. It's by Brett Wilkins. It says here, felony charges for 6 journalists covering anti-Trump protests. I know it's been talking about in a while. It says here, at least 6 journalists have been charged with felony writing as they were caught up in a mass arrest of people protesting Donald Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C. last week. U.S. News and World Report. Yeah, U.S. News and World Report reports police in the nation's capital beat protesters, journalists, and legal observers with batons and doused them with skin-burning pepper spray during the January 20th protest. Officers attacked a hunched-over elderly woman and a disabled man with a less lethal chemical weapon and repeatedly struck a journalist after he clearly identified himself. You're all going to jail, an officer told a group of people surrounded by police in a tactic known as kettling. Police aimed to catch and arrest fringe demonstrators who vandalized property but ended up netting many innocent bystanders in the process. Some members of the group were seen fleeing and were able to escape the cordon area. Police charging documents admit. Numerous journalists covering the protests, including two from a local NBC station, one independent journalist, and one from U.S. News, were permitted to leave, but other journalists weren't so lucky. These include Vaktiv producer Evan Engel, RT journalist Alec Rubinstein, Vice, Intercept, and Al Jazeera contributor Aaron Gantu, documentarian Jack Keller, and independent journalist Matt Hoppard. The Guardian reports all six were arraigned in Superior Court on Saturday and released to await hearings in February and March. If convicted, journalists and observers and protesters face up to 10 years behind bars and a $25,000 fine. The way they were treated as an absolute travesty, Keller, whose cell phone was confiscated and kept by police, told The Guardian. Thank you, buddies. Mao Tse-tung would be proud. It is maddening and frustrating situation, Keller editors Annabelle Park added. These people who were there observing and documenting the arrest, detainment, and rioting charge against journalist Evan Engel, who was covering the protests for Vaktiv and an affront to the First Amendment and journalistic freedom. The Vaktiv spokesman said on Monday, Vaktiv will vigorously contest this unfounded and outrageous charge. National Lawyers Guild, which said 222 people were arrested at the inauguration protest on Friday, filed a lawsuit accusing Washington, D.C. police of unlawful use of a chemical and less lethal weapons. NLG, whose legal observers were attacked by police and at the demonstrations, condemned the arrest and police property confiscation. Many arrestees said they were only given their wallets back. Wow. Guilty until proven innocent. Bravo. DC's finest. Bend over. If the violence inflicted by police, including chemical weapons deployment without warning in violation of D.C. law, represents a return to the violent protests were subjected in decades past. Metropolitan Police Department is clearly following the lead of the Trump administration's far-right rhetoric and reverence of white supremacy. Mager Ellinger Locke, Washington, D.C.'s NLG Mass Defense Chair, said in a statement, these illegal acts are clearly designed to chill the speech of protesters engaging in the First Amendment activity. Can you explain why Barack Obama is not a freedom-loving person himself? Come on. The U.S. Attorney's Office for Washington, D.C., which is prosecuting the arrest, he said it was reviewing the evidence collected from police on Friday. Based on facts and circumstances, we determined that probable cause existed to support the filing of felony rioting charges. William Miller, a spokesman for the office, said in a statement, as in all of our cases, we are willing to consider additional information that people bring forward. Police arrests and brutalization of journalists are a contributing factor to the United States' relatively low ranking on global press indices. The U.S. is ranked 41st out of 180 nations in press freedom on Reporters Without Borders. 2016 World Press Freedom Index, falling under the problematic category behind several former dictators and Soviet bloc countries. How come the United States should be ranked 41? It should be number one on press freedom. Because those bastards in the past think they're smarter than everybody else, and these so-called servants say they're lawyers. These are the big P now microphone. This is just an example on the war on the press, my friends. And of course, I'm very critical to J20 protest because the truth of the matter is a lot of these yahoos were paid to be there. And I've seen their propaganda videos and all that. I'm laughing so hard. Are you buying this garbage? But the fact is this, arresting these journalists is unacceptable and they need to be released and the charges should be exonerated. If not, then you leave a black eye on our Bill of Rights culture and it will blow back in your faces. Guarantee you that. So do yourselves a favor, DCDA, drop it or face the consequences on a legitimate basis. All right. It's interesting here. I'm going to do a little video case study. This is by 10th Amendment Center. It says here, Nevada beat D.C. by turning off the water. Can states legally and successfully shut off the water to an agency? Absolutely. So there's action items on here, but you know what? And there's a link for that where it says Nevada beats D.C. turn off wars. I'm going to play the video, and you can hear it for yourselves. All right, so check it out.
Can states legally and successfully shut off water to a federal agency? Absolutely. It's already been done. Yucca Mountain is in Nevada, about 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas. It was originally selected as a nuclear waste dump in 1987, but it wasn't until 2002 that President Bush and Congress officially approved the site and moved to make the dump a reality. This was not a popular move in Nevada. The governor filed an official notice of disapproval of the site selection, but the federal government rejected it. Nevada filed several lawsuits disputing the EPA's standards for the site and asserting the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's duty to uphold public health and safety standards. To run the drill rigs necessary to take soil samples, as well as other operations, the feds needed to pump more than 140 million gallons of water to the area each year. But state law governs the use of groundwater, not federal law. In 2002, the U.S. Department of Energy filed applications for permanent water permits with the Nevada Division of Water Resources. But the state engineer rejected the applications on the basis it was detrimental to the public interest and that the state legislature had previously determined it was unlawful to store waste at Yucca Mountain. Nevada still allowed federal officials to use a limited amount of water at the site for showers, restrooms, and fire emergencies. Eventually, the DOE began ignoring the restrictions and started drilling operations anyway. In the summer of 2007, state engineer Tracy Taylor issued a cease and desist order blocking further water use for drilling. The feds filed an emergency injunction challenging the order based on the supremacy clause of the Constitution. The DOE motion asserted that the state wasn't just protecting its water rights, but trying to block a federal project. Surprisingly, the federal court sided with Nevada. In his 2007 opinion, the U.S. District Judge wrote, "The validity of Western states' groundwater rights and the right to regulate water in the public interest is not a right to be taken lightly, nor is it a right that can cavalierly be ignored or violated by a federal agency." Regarding the Supremacy Clause argument, he wrote, "At present, the only public interest issue is whether state officials can be precluded from exercising their lawfully mandated duties or whether a federal agency can run roughshod over a state's rights or interest without specific authority and mandate to do the precise activities it wishes to do." The department appealed the decision, but due to the long-standing roadblocks, the feds announced plans to kill the project in 2010. As a result, the DOE withdrew its water application, effectively ending the lawsuit. While there have been efforts to revive the project, today it remains effectively dead. Even if Congress does resume efforts to build, the feds will still have to find a way to get water. Refusing to provide water to a federal agency worked. The feds didn't just march up the mountain and take the water, and trucking it in was both cost prohibitive and almost logistically impossible. Even a federal court upheld the right to refuse cooperation under the anti-commandeering doctrine, and the state action ultimately forced the federal government to scrap its plan. Can states legally and successfully
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, you're going to hear some music in the background, all that. DJ Louis here from the Java Lounge. They do it around every Friday night. Cool little vibe. You got people showing up here out of the woodwork. Well, one thing I got to say, that's a great thing what the Silver State has done. They sent the message to D.C. You don't mess with our states. That's what James Madison wrote in Federalist Papers 46, that the federal government shall never encroach on states' jurisdiction. So it is legit on what they've done. And I give the state the thumbs up. Utah has to be next for that so-called fusion center that's in Bluffdale, which is near Provo, Utah, which is like way north of is south of Salt Lake City. But that's why the 10th Amendment is so essential. If the federal law makes something up, they could nullify, and nullification is good. Any questions? Study your history, and it tells you all about it. All right, my friends, the music out here. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the show. Plus, feel free to download and share it throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting, whatever you do, feel free to bring this. Feel free to send your correspondence with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, freedomsnetworkscene.life, or minds.com. In addition, you can email me at lookyluck3@gmail.com. Well, it's enough of the music going on here. I'd like to thank everyone once again for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.